Hey there, friends and enemies, JoPa here again, and today I've got another Destiny 2 Titan build that I've been really enjoying running in episode Revenant, and this one is actually focused on the thruster class ability, because with this build you can leave behind stasis crystals, a strand knot, and heal yourself all with one use, and that's pretty insane. The other nice thing about this build for me is that it does perform differently depending on the level of content. If you want to be aggressive and use this in lower tier content, you can absolutely spam it and it works out very, very well. But if you want to use it in higher tier content, you play a little smarter, a little bit more defensively, and this can still be really, really good. So that's why I like this build, and I'm just going to jump into it now. First off, respect the drip. This is what a true king looks like. But we're going to start off with Stoicism that has Spirit of Hoarfrost. And so using your thruster will leave behind some stasis crystals. And then Spirit of Alpha Loopy. So using your class ability heals you and nearby allies. This is very effective and I like using it, especially either in a pinch or when I want to use it to heal up just to get to full. All of that works out well. You could replace this with Spirit of the Horn, especially at lower tier content. But once you get to higher end difficulties, then having that class ability heal you is very, very effective. Then we're going to move on. I do have on the Glacier Quake. This super is very, very good right now. You've got Thruster, obviously. I'm using Shield Throw. This is helpful to initiate combat when I grant my Overshield by tossing it at enemies, and then a Glacier Grenade as well for some additional stasis crystals. Drenger's Lash is where I get the strand matter that detonates and suspends when using my thruster, which is very, very nice. And then Knockout. This is always very effective, especially because you don't need a charged melee to activate it, so you can essentially use it when you need to recover health if you are surrounded. And this is very effective against frozen enemies as well as suspended enemies as well. Fragments, we've got Protection, so that way you get that additional survivability. We've got Dawn for becoming radiant with powered melee hits, not defeats, so you're going to be radiant quite often. Picking up an Orb of Power will grant you a Frost Armor in this case, which is nice for the artifact. And then we've got Devotion, so defeating targets afflicted with stasis or strand debuffs, aka suspend or slow, with your crystals grants you Transcendence. You're going to see me get Transcendence quite a bit, especially with the weapons that I'm using. And then we've got Facet of Hope. While you have Elemental buff, your class ability regenerates more quickly. Obviously, that's going to be pretty massive. Then we've got the Lost Signal. This one is insane with auto-loading and Unrelenting. As a stasis weapon, this will generate darkness enemy energy a lot in a way that I think people are not aware of how quickly you can get your Transcendence, especially combining this with some other facets, which is really, really nice. I'm also using Point of the Stag with Strategist, so if I get kills with this, I'm going to get my class ability back. This is especially helpful as you get to higher end difficulty content. And then Precision Instrument is nice. And then the Prospector is really good after the buffs, and the damage that it does is quite nice. Plus you're focusing on doing damage to major and boss enemies with grenade launcher. So next up, I'm going to talk briefly about the artifacts that you want on that are very, very effective, because you can mix these up quite a bit depending on which direction you want to go. Now, working back from the last slot, the Serve Cold perk is very nice. Obviously, you're going to get additional class ability energy. This will make it near infinite as long as you are picking up stasis shards, which is pretty insane. Then we've also got the Brain Freeze, which I think is the other perk that you want. The Kinetic Impacts doesn't work super well in my opinion. Next up is where you have a decision to make. So you definitely want Concussive Reload, so that way you will weaken enemies with your grenade launchers. You're also going to want Hail the Storm. This is going to be what makes your stasis crystals very, very effective as you are using them. But the final one, you can either choose Retinal Burn. So this is going to blind targets when you are using your Point of the Stag, which is very nice, and blinding enemies this way, especially bosses, is pretty effective. And so that's why I really, really like this one. But you could also run Armor of Aramis if you're playing more aggressive, so that way you will have that freezing burst while Frost Armor is active and taking a critical hit. So that's why I kind of leave that up in the air. depending on the playstyle you want to run. The next two are going to be somewhat okay, like Power from Pain, you're not going to proc a lot, but Trace Evidence is very nice, especially if you're using your bow a little bit more often than I am with the content that you're watching. If you want to use your bow more, if you're in higher end content, that's where the Trace Evidence is really going to come in handy. You can also run, obviously, Rapid Impacts and then Overload, Grenade Launcher, and stuff like that. Now, moving on to the mods, you're going to want on Stasis and Arc Siphon and Dynamo. We got Full Focusing Strike, Arc Dexterity, and then Bolstering Detonation. Resistance of your choice depending on the content you're running, and then Arc Reserves is helpful for the Prospector. Arc Weapon Surge, Absolution Better Already, and then Distribution, Powerful Attraction, and Bomber. Powerful Attraction especially is very good with this build because you're essentially spamming your thruster ability, so you're going to be constantly sucking in those orbs of power, which is really nice. Now, gameplay loop wise, you're going to want to start off with your melee ability. That is going to allow you to get that overshield really quickly, and then you can proceed to either send your grenade launcher shots into combat, or just use your class ability and the thruster in the mix of a bunch of enemies, and then use your grenade to finish them off. Either way, it doesn't really matter, but at lower tiers, when you're facing mobs of enemies, the way to play this is just essentially use your grenade launcher, switch off of it to your bow, so that way the auto-loading procs for the lost signal, if that's what you're using, that's what I like personally. It also is very helpful to have unrelenting on the lost signal, so that way you are triggering improved health regeneration all the time, which again, at higher difficulty content, you want those overshields, you want the frost armor or a void overshield or something like that pretty consistently, but also healing is massive. So the fact that I have multiple healing sources is very effective. Then we want to use your thruster in the middle of the enemies after using your grenade launcher. Make sure you're on the point of the snag. Finish off whatever enemies you need to with your bow. I like to hip fire the bow a lot more than other people. I think it's actually more effective than people believe. If you're hitting headshots, it's insane, and it'll one-shot a lot of enemies. But yeah, overall, I really enjoy this one for a couple different reasons. I don't often get to design builds around the thruster ability, and that is something that I really like, the variety of doing that and doing something very, very different. It helps that I have so many other ways to do damage with the Glacier Quake Super as well as the Prospector being very good damage dealing sources, and I can control ads as much as I want. I can absolutely lay waste to waves of enemies with my lost signal. So for me, this is a type of build that I really, really enjoy because it does things a lot different from other builds you'll see out there, and that's why I'm having such a good time with it. Like I said, if you want to, you should definitely attune the Stoicism and try to get a Spirit of Hoarfrost or Spirit of Alpha Loopy option, because I think it's very, very good with the way they've made some changes right now. And Thruster, because you get this back so quickly, the cooldown is only 36 seconds, and obviously if you have max resilience, if you have ways to generate class ability energy, it is just insanely effective. So I highly recommend trying this out for yourself, seeing if you like it as much as I do. My name is JoPa. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. Have a good one, and I'll catch you all later.